Start your day with Dr. A. Start your day. You're gonna start it. You're gonna start it. Start your day with Dr. A. Start your day. You're gonna start it.
Good morning and welcome to Start Your Day with Dr. A, a 5-minute inspirational to get your day off to an amazing start. Today we're going to look at the letter F, which is you and I are free to live for God. In Romans chapter 6, in verse 16, Paul writes, "Don't you realize that you become the slave of whatever you choose to obey? You can be a slave to sin, which leads to death, or you can choose to obey God, which leads to righteousness." Then in verse 18, he says, "Now you are free from your slavery to sin, and you have become slaves to righteous living." Do you know that right now there are 29.8 million people still living as slaves in our society? 29.8. We're not talking about just some softened form of slavery, but actual servitude in absolute ownership of someone. One of the largest groups of those is what we are fighting so hard against now, which is human trafficking. And there are people living as prostitutes, as child soldiers, even child brides, just still treated as property. So freedom really still not come to many even today. I want to tell you a story about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. The holiday came about because 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, which was 1863, that order had still not been enforced in Texas. So they were free and they did not know it. For 2.5 years free, but did not know it. And you know what? Because they didn't know it, they still acted like slaves. They still thought like slaves. They were still ruled by their masters as slaves. And in short, their identity was still one as a slave. Remember our story about the eagle and the chickens and it's time to fly? Again, they were free, did not know it, all the way up until 1865, which is 2 years later, until, and here's the historical term for it, General Order Number 3. I want you to get that in your mind because we have our own General Order Number 3. And what happened finally was on June 19th, 1865, the Union soldiers led by, the general's name was Gordon Granger, they landed in Texas finally 2.5 years after the proclamation and told the people of Texas that the slaves had been freed. They were no longer under the domination of masters. And you know what? Just like General Granger read that General Order Number 3, we have our own General Order Number 3 by an executive much higher than Abraham Lincoln. And he proclaims freedom from the power of sin over our life. Do you know the word sin does not just mean to make some act of murder or whatever we say sin is. It is also to miss the mark. You and I are free from the power of missing the mark for our life because God has destined us. Remember, we looked so far. We have been created by God to do good things and destined for success. And now we know that we're free from the power of sin, the control of not just this action of sin, but missing the mark for our life. So I want you to declare again your freedom in Christ. Say, remember, words have power. I am free to live for God. And here's your CTA today. I want you to make a declaration and a decision. You know, declaration means to say something, but the word decision, the root word, cision, is the same word for the root word incision, and it means to cut, a clean cut. I want you to declare, yes, I'm free to live for God, but I want you to make a decision that you will cut off any thinking, any words, any negativity in your life that says to you, you cannot be all that God created for you to be, that you cannot become all He destined you to be. Make that declaration today. That's your CTA. Make that decision. Cut off anything that doesn't agree with that. Only say and agree with what God says about you. All right. If you would like more free spiritual coaching and inspiration, just join us at our In Between Facebook group or at inbetweenfamily.org. See you next time on Start Your Day with Dr. A.